During the Biden administration, we have most certainly seen a significant increase in conflicts, the escalation of conflicts all around the world, prompting many fears, literally, about a potential World War III. And while we also saw a decisive victory for President-elect Trump last month, and that has given many Americans at least a breath of relief, we're certainly not out of the water. I mean, the axis of autocracies led by places like Russia and China, Iran, North Korea, all these, they continue to challenge the democratic world order. And the sudden collapse now of the brutal Assad regime in Syria has highlighted really how interconnected a growing number of global conflicts really are. And even, we've talked about it already, but the appearance of all these mystery drones across the Northeast and other places have people whispering about some involvement from Iran. So what are we to make of all this? Well, joining me now to discuss this is Gordon Chang. He is a distinguished senior fellow at the Gatestone Institute and author of many books, including his latest, Plan Red, China's Project to Destroy America. You, of course, can follow him on X under the handle @GordonG.Chang. And we encourage you to do so. Gordon, welcome back to Washington Watch. Always great to have you.
Well, thank you so much, Jody.
All right, so how dangerous is the world? How dangerous are the times in which we're living right now?
This could very well be the most dangerous moment in history. A lot of people will say that was 1962, the Cuban Missile Crisis, or 1961, the Checkpoint Charlie crisis in Berlin. But we know from the archives that neither Kennedy nor Khrushchev were willing to use their most dangerous weapons. Now, we don't know that about Xi Jinping or Vladimir Putin. And we are seeing a very bold Chinese regime, for instance, and a very bold Russian one. So, yes, the world is falling apart. And they fell apart under Biden's watch because he did not understand the use of American power. And by the way, China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, yes, they're evil.
Yeah, and you know, when you say the world, in essence, it's on fire. I mean, it really is. You watch it, all these countries that are flexing their muscles, and none of them really would lead in a place that is for the well-being of humanity as a whole. And then we have Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell made waves, frankly, last week when he seemed to at least indicate President-elect Trump's First America slogan was somehow tied to the 1930s before World War II. So what do you make of those kind of comments, especially at such a time as this?
Well, obviously, those policies that sounded good to the ear, and you know, Biden talks about cooperation, friendliness, you know, trying to find ways where we can work with China. Those policies, even though they are soothing, they have created one disaster after another. And when you look at what Mitch McConnell said, you know, it is, again, a failure of the American elites to protect the American people. And now, Jody, I think that it's possible that that axis of evil has brought the fight to the United States, because we're talking about drones. And we don't know yet whether those drones are foreign or not. Yes, I know the Pentagon says that they're not. But there are a number of people in the Air Force, for instance, who believe that a majority of those drones are being operated by foreign powers.
Yeah, and I wanted to, Bram, I'm glad you brought this up because I wanted to bounce this off you, these drones. I mean, we saw one of our own crucial Air Forces closed for several hours the other day because of the drone activity that was taking place. So what do you make of these drones? And how should our government be handling this situation?
Well, first of all, there's two alternative explanations. One of them is that these are operated by foreigners. If that's not true, then it's even more ominous because they're operated by the U.S. government, because these are too big, they are too sophisticated to be operated by hobbyists. Then the question is, what is the federal government doing with these drones? And we have seen, for instance, those two radiation spikes that have been reported in the New York metropolitan area. One in New York City, the other just across the Hudson River in New Jersey. And that leads us to believe that maybe the federal government is looking for a nuclear weapon that has been planted there by a terrorist state or somebody. We don't know that, but one thing we do know, and that is that for more than a decade, the federal government has been worried about this very scenario, about North Korea in particular, taking a nuclear device, tearing it apart, smuggling in the portions of it into the U.S., and then reassembling it in the city of their choice. So that's very well what the federal government may be doing. Whether you believe these are foreign or whether these are DHS or CIA or FBI, there are no good explanations for what's occurring.
Yeah, absolutely. And we saw, of course, a similar, if you will, response previously with the Chinese spy balloon that floated across the U.S. But looking at that versus this, should we be concerned that at least our adversaries are watching the response of the American people to these drones right now, and maybe they're seeing an opportunity?
Well, clearly China saw the failure of not only the U.S. military, but also of President Biden and his national security team to the balloon in January and February of last year, just a non-response. And so I think China then said, well, look what it could do if it tried something else. And so we've seen a lot of drone penetrations of U.S. military bases by Chinese nationals. So I think Beijing learned a lesson there. And right now, God knows what's occurring. But the point here is that the federal government needs to talk to the American people. I believe President Biden needs to address the American people and tell us what he knows and what he doesn't know. And he has to understand this, it might cause panic, but I also think the American people are mature enough to understand what's going on. In the absence of information, we have to assume the worst. We need to have the President of the United States talk to us.
Well, and there's panic being created by the silence as well. And if it's a classified operation, just say so. There's a classified. But you don't need to be fearful. We're just doing it's a classified mission we're involved in. Whatever, but the silence is unacceptable. Thank you, Gordon Chang, Senior Fellow at the Gatestone Institute. Always an honor to have you on Washington Watch.
It's an honor for me to be here, and thank you so much, Jody.